Can you imagine being repeatedly assaulted by an invisible entity that you can't defend yourself against? That's freaking terrifying. Horror movies come and go, but some still stick with you after the credits roll, and The Entity from 1982 is one of them. But what makes The Entity so terrifying? Well, we're going to talk about it. Today we're breaking down exactly why the supernatural nightmare refuses to fade into obscurity. So if you love horror and psychological terror, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're getting into it. One of the scariest things about The Entity is the fact that it's based on a true story. It's based on a case of Doris Bither, a woman who claimed to be constantly assaulted in the 70s by an unseen entity that she was powerless to defend herself against. Paranormal investigators even documented the strange occurrences in her home, such as things falling off the shelves and floating light orbs. When a horror movie is rooted in real-life terror, it's not just fiction, it becomes a chilling possibility. And that alone makes The Entity more disturbing than your average ghost story. The unseen terror is always the scariest terror. There's nothing more terrifying than something that you can't fight off or see coming for you before it's already there. And unlike other supernatural films where you can see the ghost or the demon, The Entity goes straight to preying on our darkest fears and makes the entity completely invisible. That's right, you never know when it's coming. There's nothing scarier than fighting something that you can't stop, you can't see, nor understand. The sound design, special effects, and the camera angles all work together masterfully to also create that sense of helplessness that you feel throughout the film. The way the entity throws Carla around the room with no visible attacker shown, pure nightmare fuel. And Barbara Hershey, who plays Carla in the movie, this is probably my favorite role that she's ever done. She makes you feel every ounce of fear, trauma, vulnerability that her character experiences. Now that is a masterful actor. And because her performance is so raw and believable, that's another reason that the movie is still so effective and terrifying today. Most horror movies have a pattern, not The Entity. You do not get to breathe in this movie. The tension builds and it builds and it builds. And just when you think that you're out of the woods, it builds some more. Even the paranormal researchers can't save her. In most horror movies where the heroes come in, they're able to save the main character. Here, they just fail. She has to continuously deal with these hauntings up until the very end of the movie. That's right, the entity can't be defeated. At its core, the entity isn't just about supernatural horror. It's a metaphor for trauma and facing it head on. Carla Moran isn't just haunted by an unknown force. She's being forced to fight something that she has no control over. The movie forces us to confront the reality of abuse and trauma and how sometimes we just don't have easy answers for things. So why is The Entity still terrifying today? Well, because it taps into something more than just jump scares. It's about powerlessness, trauma, and the horror of fighting back against something that no one else believes in. It's a film that sticks with you long after the screen fades to black. As I understand it, the lady that this movie was based off of has actually been deceased since 1999, and I often wonder what happened to her and how she lived her life. It also goes without saying that this movie was heavily fictionalized. We don't really know what happened based off the real accounts. I was only able to find so many things. I think only like 3 Polaroids exist from the investigations that are available to the public. And when we think of horror, we often imagine the things that we could see. Monsters, creatures, killers hiding in the shadows. Now with The Entity, it strips your comfort away and it deprives you of knowing what you're up against. This film takes the idea of an unseen terror and pushes it to the extreme. It makes you feel just as powerless as the protagonist. The most horrifying aspects of The Entity is the sheer brutality of the attacks. Instead of a ghost whispering in the dark or knocking over a lamp, you have full-on physical and sexual attacks here. Pretty terrifying. Imagine trying to explain to people that something invisible is attacking you. Imagine trying to tell this to a medical professional and they're telling you that this is all in your head. And the terror isn't just in the attacks, it's the isolation, the helplessness, knowing that there's nothing you can do to stop it from happening. The fear of the unknown, the fear of being powerless, the fear that maybe, just maybe, that this is possible and could happen. That's enough to make anybody just absolutely terrified. I will always say that this is one of the scariest movies of all time, but not in a conventional manner, because it's the thought of what you can't see that could possibly hurt you. And that right there is the most frightening thing of all. So what do you think? Does The Entity still hold up today? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into spooky content. I'll see y'all in the next one.